Agenda item by item, and if there's an issue or a question or a concern that you have, please just let me know. The other thing, Superintendent, I see you have staff here, so there may be some presentations, and I know you'll call them up. And at 9:15, we have another meeting, and sometimes I get rolling so fast I forget. And so, board members, I hope that you'll help me remember to adjourn or recess this meeting and move into the other meeting. But in any case, the first item of business will be the opening of the meeting. Second item will be the approval of the agenda. And I do have an agenda change that I'm compelled to read. Superintendent's Human Resources recommendations, deleted item 9.11, employee termination due to the employee retiring effective 12/7/2018. Then moving on, recognitions, we're showing none. Visitors, we're showing none. Public comment, item 5.1, we don't yet know. Item 6, administrative personnel appointments, there are none. And then item 7 will be committee and staff reports. This is for the workshop only. And so, first of all, 7.1, we have in-county travel paid for the period of October 25th through November 21st, 2018, presented by Mrs. Rita Scallon, Chief Financial Officer. And so when I pause like that, that's your chance. All right, 7.2, out-of-county travel paid for the period of October 25th through November 21, 2018, presented by Mrs. Rita Scallon, Chief Financial Officer. 7.3, update on facility needs, presented by Mr. Nick Koutsaratis, Assistant Superintendent, School Operations, and Mr. Steve Bolton, Director of Facilities, Planning, and Maintenance. I see these gentlemen rising. Superintendent,
yes.
Would you?
I ask Assistant Superintendent Koutsaratis and Director Mr. Bolton to give us a little bit of an update on where we are on our physical needs and capital needs and things that we need to do. And these aren't wishes, these are needs. And so, Mr. Koutsaratis, if you and Mr. Bolton would share with the group.
Okay. Well, first of all, it's no secret that we have less funds than we need to maintain our facilities, and so we have become accustomed, or the way we're doing things now is we are more of a reactive than a proactive approach on our facilities. So if we have a boiler or a chiller that might be at the end of its life expectancy, and let's say it's supposed to last 20 years and it's now past that, if we had the funds, we could proactively put those on a list and replace those periodically, so we don't have breakdown. And now what we're dealing with is, as we have things break down, when we should, maybe it's 20 years old, what's the cost of fixing it versus replacing it, and we're just trying to band-aid it along a little longer. And so when it truly breaks, and then we go ahead and replace it or fix it, or when the cost is prohibitive to repair. And so that's just that's the status of how it's been going in the last few years. So we have a little PowerPoint here.
All right, and so just to point out very quickly, board members, you'll see the TV. We look at it down here, and the public, of course, can see it behind us. All right. Thank you, Mr. Koutsaratis.
Yes, sir. Okay, so roofing and canopy costs, and these numbers, well, the roofing cost numbers come from Jacobs, and the canopy costs, we have just we came up with those numbers recently. So when you add those two together, we're at, and these are approximates. These are our best estimates. These are not hard bids or hard quotes, but we're in the $37 million range for that. And Steve, what is our capital budget as far as in the
for this year to spread amongst all the projects, we just going to give you a round number, not exact number, but around we had about 7 to 8 million, and of course that covered the TPM projects, that covers all the a lot of other things that need to be done on a recurring basis, that kind of thing, and then we just have a little bit of leftover money to do some of the repairs he's talking about, replacing chillers, boilers, that kind of thing.
Well, I think there's some debt service. Some of that.
Yeah, that's above, there's.
You can't allocate because we're using it to pay off debt.
Yes.
You didn't include that.
I didn't include that.
Right.
That's already.
Right. Now, in one time, gentlemen, I understood that someone had come up with a number of square miles of roofing that we have in the county, and
Yes, we have approximately 6 million square feet.
6 million square feet of roofing in Okaloosa County schools. 6 million square feet. Wow. All right, thank you.
So 10 million, a little over 10 million in parking and storm drain projects. If you look at some of our schools, going through those parking lots, it's a patchwork of asphalt, and we have several schools that have recurrent drain issues that we have to deal with. And you know, I recall a few that we had to fix with the big flood in 2014. So we have several schools with drainage issues that, you know, it's not necessarily at the forefront of, we've got to prioritize and reprioritize almost weekly. When if we have a boiler go out or a chiller go out, then we have to reprioritize where we're going to spend these funds.
Well, and I think it's on the storm drain, one of our newest schools, Shoal River, has issues with their drainage. So it's just not the older schools, it's the newer schools. And then another school in my district, Walker, today is without heat because we had an issue with where we're going to have to replace the boiler.
Right.
So,
And
I
that
mean,
boiler's ordered.
Yes,
It's just
and-
not here yet. It just happens to be one of the coldest days of the year.
Well, and those are our newest schools.
Right.
However, their age is at the point where we're having to replace things.
Right.
Right, exactly.
Permanent classrooms, including technology and infrastructure. And so this would be reducing our portables. And, you know, it's hard to say eliminate portables because you never know what the population is going to do. But, you know, reducing those number of portables, it's always better to have students in brick and mortar because of weather and also because of the post-Parkland environment that we live in. We want to keep our kids safe.
How many portables do we currently have, gentlemen?
170.
And I would like to add, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but that's a lot of portables, but we're not unique in that respect. Many school districts have many, many portables, and some of that is the consequence of growth, and the second part of that is the consequence of the class size amendment. And but I just want to, so the public understands, it's not like we're the only one that has 170 portables. It's all over the state of Florida now.
And if we did have the money to reduce the portables, we would not necessarily eliminate them all. So I'm thinking Davidson Middle School, for example, there's a portable
That's right.
that serves as a concession stand. And so we would have to have an overabundance of money before we go and replace that concession stand because it's functional, it's workable, and it is one of the portables. This one's a big scary number to me. HVAC mechanical, so 76.6 million. And these are the things we're talking about: chillers going out, boilers going out. Some of the systems mechanical systems in our schools, they are just so old, and this is it's almost like what we put into it is a drop in the bucket.
and I think it's important for the general public to know with HVAC, Fort Walton Beach High School, it's taken us how many years to replace all the HVAC, all the air conditioning units in
We
it?
had six phases.
Right.
We finished 6 phases. It's not done.
Right.
There's more to do.
Right.
So we didn't have the money to to do.
But the way we've done it is just kind of piece
Phased it out.
right.
But, so there are other schools in a similar need that Fort Walton Beach design plan's already complete, so it makes sense to finish that out. But there are several other schools that need the same attention that aren't getting that attention. ADA playgrounds, and so here's how we're addressing this. When we have and we put 4 or 5 of these in last year. When we have a situation, we have a student that requires a wheelchair-bound student, we put those in immediately. We don't necessarily have the $2 million to go ahead and do them all, and so when we have the need, we do it. And so we are slowly getting them done. We're doing several a year, and we plan to continue that. That's one of the priorities that we want to complete. But again, $2 million there to finish it all out, and we don't have that sort of money when we have boilers and chillers going out. We've got to just do them as they're required to be done.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kutsaratus and Mr. Bolton. We're going to take a little break.
Okay.
We have another advertised meeting, and then we're going to come back to you, okay? All right. So we will recess the current workshop, and we will convene the corporation meeting. And at this juncture, Mr. McInnes, I'm going to turn it over to you, sir.
Yes, sir. This is a meeting of the school board as the Okaloosa School Board Leasing Corporation. You do sit as the board of directors of that entity, which is tied into capital construction financing. And for today, Mr. Chairman, if you would please start on your agenda with an approval of this agenda.
All right, so we're going to have to get there. Could y'all find it on
If you go all the way to the very bottom of your agenda, it's one of the last items.
on the current agenda?
On the current workshop agenda.
Okay.
Yes, all the way down.
All right, board members, so you'll scroll
Yeah.
all the way down.
Hard copy.
18.3.
Yep.
We have a
I
hard
don't know if
copy.
that's it or not. I'm afraid it's not. Okay, now we'll look on yours. Thank you. All right, so we've done the call of order. I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Destin.
Second.
I
Dr. Kelly.
think Dr. Kelly might have got you on that one, so we'll do Dr. Kelly as a second. Any further discussion about the agenda approval? Seeing or hearing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. Second will be the approval of the minutes of the meeting of December the 7th, 2018.
I'll move we approve those.
Motion by Mr. Destin to approve. Looking for a second.
I'll second it.
Second by Mrs. Evanchek. Any discussion? Hearing or seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. All right, section 4, action items will be the annual election of directors. Mr. McInnes?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, under the articles of this entity, the members of the school board are to be the board of directors of this corporation. So at this time, it would be appropriate to have a motion that elects each of the 5 members of the school board to the board of directors of the leasing corporation.
Looking for a motion.
And I'll move that one.
Motion by Mr. Destin,
Second.
second by Dr. Kelly. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. All right.
And the second item, Mr. Chairman, once again, under this corporate structure, the school board chairman is to be the president, the vice chairman is to be the vice president, and the superintendent is the corporate secretary, but we need a motion to elect those officers.
I'll move that we elect those officers.
Motion by Mr. Destin,
Second.
second by Ms. Vanchek. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0.
And the final item, Mr. Chairman, is an approval to pay the annual filing fee with the Florida Secretary of State to maintain the corporation in its active status.
And I will move that we file the appropriate renewal with the state.
Motion by Mr. Destin,
I'll second.
second by Mr. Bryant. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0.
And that would conclude the business of that entity.
Thank you, Mr. McInnes. All right, so we'll adjourn that meeting and we will reopen the school board workshop. And gentlemen, if you would return to the podium, we can continue now. Thank you.
So cafeteria renovation upgrade. A lot of our schools were built for smaller numbers. They're small neighborhood schools. We have 400, 500, 600 students, which was the intent, and some of them have 900, approaching 1,000 in some of our schools. So it makes it difficult. You start eating lunch. We have parameters that you cannot eat before a certain time, and you must finish lunch also before a certain time. So a lot of times we're eating lunch from around 10 to 1 in those areas, and you just have to cycle them through there. So a larger cafeteria would give you more flexibility in your day. One of the things that, as we talk to architects, we talk to our TPM, is sometimes the cafeterias are so old and they're so small that it makes more sense to turn them into classrooms and build a new cafeteria multi-purpose room. And so, as always, when we look at these things, cost is what we're looking at. What is the best bang for our buck? And can we convert this space into classroom space and then come around and add and build an adequate size cafeteria and also a multi-purpose room? And so it's not just cafeterias. What the renovation piece is turning some of them into some existing cafeterias into classrooms and building appropriate size cafeteria and multi-purpose rooms for those elementary schools.
And I'd like to comment that we have schools like Davidson, for instance, that's probably going to have 4 lunches next year
Right.
because of the size. And then you got another school, Baker School, that starts at like 10, and they go all the way through. So the challenges are there. And again, for the general public, I would encourage you to go into your local school and take a look at the facilities themselves so you can see firsthand what we're talking about here today.
So walls and entry security doors and locks, almost $5 million there. And what we've done is Mr. Bolton and myself, representatives from the Sheriff's Department, we had a retired terrorism expert, along with Danny Dean, our specialist here for school safety. We went to every school in the county and assessed the current situation and the needs and what we need to do to keep students safe. And so that's where this number comes from. Steve, do you have anything to add on that number?
Of course, as time goes by, what we can afford to get to it in the out years, and with hurricanes and all, we may see that number rise in the next year, 2, 3 years as we complete the upgrades.
Now, does that include any money that we're supposed to be receiving from the state with this, with the law that passed this year?
That's the next slide.
Okay. I jumped ahead, I'm sorry.
So we did submit the grant to the state, the safety and security grant, and there's a predetermined amount that we would automatically qualify for as long as we've submitted it correctly, and we have. And so it's just under 1.1 million is what our share would be. And so we have put on the grant, we put out there that we would, and this is coming from our security experts. It's not Nick and Steve going, hey, let's do this. It's our security experts saying, this is the most important thing, and the most important things to keep our children safe is the perimeter fencing. And we have 1.1 million hopefully coming from the state as soon as possible, and we have 3.8 million of needs just to get the school perimeter fencing done. And so that's one piece. The other piece is the single point entry, and the fencing cost does not include the expense that we would need for a hardened single point entry at every school.
So I'd like to ask you, are you saying that you're trying to fence the perimeter of every school in the district? Is that the goal?
The goal is to have the perimeter fence, some of them already done. The standard that we hear from the government to get credit for having counting it as a fence school is a 7-foot fence. Well, 7-foot fences that's an odd size. So we're looking at an 8-foot fence perimeter around all of our schools. the standard would be an 8-foot fence. Some of them have 4-foot fences, some of them, I'm thinking of one in particular, it's a 4-foot fence, and over time, it's more of a 3-foot fence, and kids routinely jump it as they're trying to escape the, not escape, but run, run at PE. They routinely jump the fence.
Yeah.
Well, it might have been employees.
It might have been.
They're
But
trying to escape.
I know youngsters, and it's, hey, I want to see if I can jump that fence. And so some of them are not adequate, and we are going through and replacing those.
So if you're looking at putting fencing, then obviously there has to be an entry onto the campus. So is that going to be something that's an automated situation? I mean, where you'd have like a gate type thing? Or how would that work? For example, I'm just thinking here, Choctawhatchee High School sits on a major thoroughfare through the city. To try and fence that and allow people to come and go, I just can't even imagine how you would begin to try and do something. And same with Crestview High School on a major.
Right.
I mean, you've got people coming at different times, high school kids come and go, parents come and go. What are your thoughts on that?
Sure. Okay.
Mr. Kouzaratis,
Yes, ma'am.
I want to caution you. We were cautioned about making comments about some of these projects, and I mean, privately, you can certainly have that, but we were definitely cautioned that we have to be extremely careful what we say publicly.
And if we're lucky, one day everyone will be able to see it.
Yes.
Okay.
But please, I encourage you to talk to them
Okay,
privately.
I'll get with you and we'll
Yes,
discuss that.
The security team has discussed that,
Yeah.
and we do have a plan for that.
Great, thank you.
I just have one question. Would this be chain link? Are they solid? Are they see-through? Are they?
One of the things, cautiously, one of the things that that we are looking at is a combination of chain link and like a wrought iron look.
Mhm.
So we want to make, along Highway, what was that, Racetrack Road? Along Racetrack Road, you don't want to put chain link fence up. You want to make it look nice. And
Not
so-
very inviting.
So, yes, very inviting.
Right.
And so the fronts of the school, we want to make look inviting, but at the same time, keep
Yep.
the kids safe.
Sure.
So it'll be a combination of.
I think Gulf Breeze has some of that kind
Right.
of fencing
They
that
do.
you're
Well,
talking
and,
about.
and Northwood
Yeah.
School does
Yeah,
too.
North-
So,
North-
yeah.
Okay.
So one of the things that our capital money has not been spent on lately is buses. And we were, Escambia County graciously gave us their surplus buses last year. And so that's kind of a stopgap measure. But our bus fleet, we have over 200 buses, and they're old. We don't have a plan, and we don't have the money to buy, say, a tenth of the fleet every year, and that would take 20 years to replace it. So we don't. That's a need that we have that we're really not spending a whole lot of money toward.
And I would like to add, some of the newer buses have increased safety features that our old buses do not have, and I think that's a critical point that we need to understand.
I want to say in the early 2000s, there's a cutoff. It's either 2009 or 2007. Every bus after that has seat belts, and then all the new buses that we will order will have seat belts and air conditioning. A lot of our buses don't have air conditioning, and a lot of our buses don't have seat belts.
Have you looked into the comparison of cost between maybe doing a lease kind of situation on buses versus purchase?
We have looked at that.
Okay.
And we will continue to look at that. It's right there. Okay, here comes our technical. There we go.
Come on,
Okay,
Dustin.
and so this list was compiled several years ago when we were speaking, we were talking about a half-cent sales tax, and the principals said, these are the things that we need in our schools. And so the list was generated from the principals, and at that time, that's the number we have. And these are needs. These are not, hey, I want these. These are nice things to have. These are things that are needed at the school. So that was a school-generated list of things that the principals thought they actually needed, and we concurred that they were needs and not wants. And so we've got millions and millions of dollars worth of needs, and we don't have the money to meet them.
And I encourage board members to review that list. It's very practical. And if you see that list, you'll realize this is not this is not an aggrandizement of the school. This is a bathroom that needs to be redone. This is rotting fuchsia board. Those are the types of things that are on that list. And I think it's important that you review that.
That concludes our list and our presentation.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Board members may have questions.
Excuse me, Mr. Scott.
I was just going to observe that's well in excess of $250 million, $250 million. When we talked about our half cent, Ms. Jackson, what did that generate a year? 17 million?
I think it's 19 million, and that's approximately 186 or 109. Y'all do the math. Steve, you're the math guy. 10 years, 19 million, 190 million dollars.
Right.
That will not cover everything.
Well, far from it. And that's just the observation. And even if we were to take that revenue stream and use it to bond all of this, that would take it all.
Every
So
dime.
that's the situation we're in. But at least we would have the ability to do them a lot of these things
Yes.
with that half cent if we're able to get it. And that appears to be our only rescue that I see in the future with in excess of $250 million needs.
Particularly the safety issues, Mr. Destin. Those are huge to me.
That's right.
And the buses are huge to me. If you visit those lunchrooms, it's unbelievable. I mean, I've been in every one of them. And I can tell you, they're packed in there. And this would help us make a very good start
It
in
would.
getting things taken care of.
We'd still have to do some
Yes.
priority
Yes.
fixing, but it's good that you made the report so people in the public can understand the numbers that we're talking about that the district needs. So hopefully we'll be able to do something about it.
So I was going to go ahead and make the request for the list, the miscellaneous,
Absolutely.
since we do have 2 new school board members in
Absolutely.
mind. So
Yeah,
if we
I'd
could
like
just
to
go
see
ahead
that
and
list.
just send it to all of us.
So you guys send those out.
I'd like to add one more thing, and when you all receive calls about heat not in the school or air conditioner or whatever the case may be, I just want you to remember, and the public may not know this, but we have 2 or 3 of each of the trade skills in each zone. In other words, there's 2 air conditioner repair guys in each zone. And if you think about how many air conditioned systems there are within a zone, how many plumbing needs there are, how many electrician needs there are, there's 2 or 3 guys of each of those trades spread out amongst 12 schools within every zone. So think about that, and that's why it's a little hard to get.
I always thought about it when I had to wait my turn.
That's right. The older we get, the more problems we have.
Well, but in going with that, Mr. Bolton, I do think it's, since you did bring it up, I will make a comment. But, you know, we had one school in particular that went 8 weeks without air conditioning unit. And to me, it's, that's unacceptable. So, you know, so I would hope that we could get the timeline down a little bit quicker. And I understand you have to wait your turn.
No,
but
you're right. 8 weeks is a long time. I agree.
And the reason,
That's just, it was on order, we were waiting.
We
for
just
to
couldn't
come
get
up.
it in.
It
Okay.
wasn't because of the two
Right.
personnel.
Right.
It was-
Well, and along those lines, let me just interject here. I remember one time that I had to wait for a unit to come across the Pacific Ocean from China on a boat, and we had to wait. I mean, there was no other way. That's where it was made. So I get it.
Well, and also the air conditioning units, and we've talked about this, of course, are very old. And so they don't make square parts for circle parts anymore. You know, you kind of have to do it. I get that, but try to tell that to the kids and the parents and everybody else. Great.
I know I get the calls.
And I was just going to say, Nick, that of all people here, I think I've probably lived intimately in 3 or 4 of our buildings, and 2 of mine were 2 of probably our older buildings. And so I certainly can concur and understand the very dire need that we have in some of these buildings for the updates and the repairs, as well as certainly the security issues. So thank you.
Anything else, Ms. Vanchek, you good?
Thank you for what you guys do and your maintenance crew. I know they're out there really working hard. It's just a big job to cover the schools we have and the condition. You know, sometimes you're putting a Band-Aid on it when it needs surgery.
Right.
And
Thank
that's it. Thank you.
May I just reply to
Sure.
Mr. Bryant's comment? So Mr. Bryant, sometimes if we know we need an air conditioner, when we order that air conditioner for a specific school and it has specific electrical requirements, those air conditioners are not waiting on a shelf. They have to be built to our specifications, and sometimes that's what takes the time. So,
Right.
I want the public to know that.
And I appreciate you saying that, because I think it is important that the public understand. And of course, like Ms. Jackson said, you know, we get the complaints, and of course, you know, we give you the call.
Right.
But you know, when we talk to you in private, you know, trying to explain that to, you know, mom and dad who have their children and their teachers, whatever, you know, so I appreciate that, and I do appreciate all that you do and what all of our maintenance people do. I just, like I said, you know, these are the issues that we battle daily. So.
Very good. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, board members, so that will conclude that portion of the agenda, and now we'll move to Section 8. That will be the consent agenda. 8.1 will be the approval of the consent agenda, and as is usual and customary, I'll read each item, and it'll take us a while. 8.2, approval of the minutes of student disciplinary hearing of November the 8th, 2018, minutes of special meeting of November 8th, 2018, minutes of workshop meeting of November 8th, 2018, minutes of regular meeting of November 13th, 2018, and minutes of organizational meeting of November 20th, 2018, recommended by the superintendent for approval. And at any time, if there's something that you have, please just speak up. 8.3, appropriation of District 1 School Board Member Capital Outlay Funds to Choctawhatchee High School for Chromebooks, mice, licenses, and charging cart in the amount of $10,338.35, presented by Lamar White and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.4, appropriation of District 4 School Board Member Capital Outlay Funds to Laurel Hill School for laptops for the construction program in the amount of $4,904.10, presented by Board Member Tim Bryant and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.5, appropriation of District 4 School Board Member Capital Outlay Funds to Crestview High School for laptops for the electrical program in the amount of $4,904.10, presented by Vice Chairman Tim Bryant and recommended by the superintendent for approval.
Dr. White, if it's okay,
Yes, sir.
I would like to have April come up, and not just
Sure.
because it's my item, but very excited about the CTE program, and just tell us a little bit about what these computers are going to benefit.
Morning. Thank you so much for allowing me to come before you today, and I'd like to thank Mr. Bryant for his generosity in giving us this money to provide computers for our electricity program at Crestview High School and for the carpentry program at Laurel Hill. We started the carpentry program this year, and we have a new teacher in the electrical program, which, by the way, we are going to feed that into HVAC, so our students would be perfect to be assistants to our district maintenance people. So we would love to make that kind of partnership with you. But our students are going to be certifying in OSHA. So when they leave our classroom, they'll be OSHA certified, and they are working towards their PAC certification, which is a pre-apprenticeship certificate training certification through the Home Builders Institute. And they'll be doing that in both electricity and at Laurel Hill. So we're really excited. The kids at Laurel Hill we have a new teacher there who's on fire. He's amazing and has really done a lot. So if you get a chance to go up and see that program, we are growing that program, and the same thing at Crestview High School with the electricity program. And these computers will allow them to do the online HVAC curriculum as well as the OSHA certification. So we really appreciate your support. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Good job.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay. Moving on to item 8.6, Budget Amendment Number 2, Fiscal Year 2018-2019, presented by Mrs. Rita Scallon, Chief Financial Officer, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.7, Monthly Financial Statement for October 2018, presented by Mrs. Rita Scallon, Chief Financial Officer, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.8, Invoices to be approved for payment, presented by Mrs. Rita Scallon, Chief Financial Officer, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.9, Payroll Warrant Register and Accounts Payable Warrant Register for October 2018 totaling $25,287,850.98, and bank transfers for October 2018 totaling $5,260,000, presented by Mrs. Rita Scallon, Chief Financial Officer, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Item 8.10, Exceptional Student Educational 45-Day Educational Program Security Services Agreement between the School Board of Okaloosa County and the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Department, presented by Mrs. Rita Scallon, Chief Financial Officer, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Item 8.11, ITB 19-06 HVAC Equipment and Parts, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director Purchasing, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Item 8.12, Tag-on Bid Purchase over $25,000, Playmore Recreational Products and Services, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director Purchasing, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.13, Revised Recommendations of Award for ITB 17-04 Lawn Care Services for Multiple Schools, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director Purchasing, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval.
Chairman,
Yes, sir.
If I may, just, I believe this was where the contract was awarded to a company that found they could not service it, so it appears we've gone back to the next lowest bidder.
All right, Mr. Wyndham or Mr. Bolton? I'm not sure, maybe both of you then. Superintendent had to step out, so.
Yes, sir. We went to the second low.
Right.
And they'll serve it out if approved for the duration of the contract.
Okay. They're confident they can do it, huh?
Yes, we have used them before,
Right,
so we
okay.
know about them. They were the previous bidder, so we're confident
Yeah.
they can.
Thanks.
All right, thanks, fellas. All right, so moving on to 8.14, Exempted Purchase Estimated Figures for International Baccalaureate IB Examinations, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director Purchasing, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.15, Agreement with Gulf Power Company for use of school district facilities as storm restoration staging sites, presented by Mr. Steve Bolton, Director of Service Facilities Planning and Maintenance, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.16, yes ma'am, did you have something?
I just wanted
Sure.
to, April, I believe that, I couldn't be in here when she was
Yes,
up here. I believe that the Public School Foundation has just received $10,000 for the Laurel Hill and Crestview programs. Is that correct? Okay, I just got an email that said that. It says, can you mention the Public Schools Foundation raised $10,000 for the Laurel Hill and Crestview programs?
Oh, the Public School Foundation, I'm thinking of the Gulf Power.
Okay,
Foundation.
thank
We
you.
are doing something with the Gulf Power Foundation.
We have more than one.
I was supposed to mention
Yes,
that.
they are working, they're supplying $10,000 as well, so we're splitting it between both schools.
That's good.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank both of you, okay? All right, so we just did 8.15, the Gulf Power Agreement. So moving on to 8.16, School Food Service Updated a la carte Pricing for Elementary and Secondary Schools for 2018-2019 school year, presented by Mr. Stephen Anderson, Program Director for Food Services, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval.
Chairman,
Yes,
I
sir.
looked at the material and I wasn't quite sure. Are there any increases or is it basically the same?
Defer to Steve on that.
Come on up, Mr. Anderson.
There's actually only two changes to it.
Okay.
cookie and mini Rice Krispie treats, they were reduced in price by 10 cents, they're 25 cents. And then the Jack Link's teriyaki jerky pouch was increased by 50 cents.
Okay,
And the rest of the prices were what you approved earlier.
thanks.
All right, thank you, Mr. Anderson. All right, moving on to item 8.17. Addition of youth mental health component to the Master in Service Plan presented by Mrs. Denise McLaughlin, Specialist, Professional Development, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.18, 2018-2019 application for renewal of the AFRL Engineers for America, EFA, Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics STEM Initiative Grant for Okaloosa STEM Academy, presented by Mr. Neely Calhoun, Teacher on Special Assignment, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.19, request permission to apply for the 2019-2020 National Math and Science Initiative, NMSI, College Readiness Program, CPR, for grades 9 through 12, provided through the NMSI Military Family Mission, presented by Mrs. Sheila Lightbourne, Secondary Curriculum Director, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval.
Yes.
Ms. Evanchik?
Yes.
ma'am.
I'm excited about this program. Ms. Lightbourne? On a personal note, when I was in the classroom, I was in a program similar to this called JFG, which was phenomenal. And I saw firsthand what it did for students. And I think this sounds great. But if you could just give us a real quick for the public, because they're not seeing all this information, what this is going to entail and how this is really going to help us.
Sure. The 4 schools that qualify to apply are due to their military population. So the students have to have military, active duty military parents. So the 4 schools are our 4 big high schools. What this will do will give the teachers, so it's to build AP programs, to build our college readiness. It will give teachers training. It will give students opportunities for Saturday study sessions. It will bring in outside teachers as experts to also work with our students and our teachers. It also gives incentives to the teachers and the students for passing their AP exams, some very nice incentives. So it's really a win-win for everyone. The students win, the teachers win, and we prepare our students better for those college and career type opportunities.
So when you say incentives, actually you're talking about financial incentives, yes, correct, to the students?
Directly from NMSI to the students. If a student makes a 3 or above on their AP exam, they would receive $100. And if they take 5 AP exams and get 3s above all of them, they would get $100 per exam.
Well, when I was working with teenagers, that was an incentive, that
yes,
money. So I think that this is great. You know, we're always pushing our AP, our upper level students, and I think that's going to really make a difference. It's a great sounding program.
It's not all AP, it is science, math, ELA, English, and computer science. So those are the content areas that it would include.
That's great.
And so there were just a couple of items that I know we had some earlier discussion about. And board members, this is a little bit unique because this is not a grant, I guess. So what's happening is the district is requesting permission to apply for a program, not a grant.
Correct. NMSI themselves actually have the grant, and then we would apply to be part of their program, but we do not apply for the grant itself.
That's right. And Superintendent, you know, we talked about this,
yes,
and Mrs. Scallon, you were involved in this discussion too. Are we going to receive funds to the school district?
No, sir.
And that's an important point.
Yes. The question was asked. I contacted our NMSI contact, and all of the funds that go to students, teachers, or anybody involved goes directly from NMSI to those folks.
And that's a good thing. So we're not a pass-through.
Right. We don't have to deal with any of it. We just get the benefit of what those teachers and students get to do. That's awesome.
Okay. Any further questions or comments, board members?
Thank you, Sheila, for that
Thank you,
work.
Ms. Lightborn.
Thank you, Ms. Lightborn. All right, moving on to item 8.20, additional course adoptions for the 2018-2019 school year, presented by Julianne Smith, Secondary Curriculum Specialist, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Item 8.21, waiver of the OCEA master contract requested by the Okaloosa STEM Academy to waive the daily planning period requirement for the 2019-2020 school year, presented by Mrs. Wanda Avery, Assistant Principal, Okaloosa STEM Academy, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. And just to say, this is something that we've done before. There's a procedure to go through the negotiated contracts, et cetera, and that's all been done. Okay.
And that's just for specific teachers, yeah.
That might be a
They're
question better answered by someone other than me. So Superintendent, maybe you have staff that could help us with that
It's
particular
the
waiver
STEM
request.
waiver for,
I think it's because of their block plan.
please,
Great.
please
Yes,
do.
Mr. Butler would have the answer to that because it
We've
had to
done
be
this
approved.
for a long time.
The STEM Academy, they use a block schedule
Mhm.
to where they can't have a planning period
Gotcha.
every day. So they have a double planning period every other day.
And who does it apply
It
to?
affects all the
STEM.
There
instructional
you go.
staff. of
Everyone,
STEM.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. All right, so moving on to Section 9, Superintendent's Human Resources Recommendations. All right, now this one will be lengthy. Here we go. 9.1, Employees on Administrative Leave, presented by Mr. Marcus Chambers, Assistant Superintendent, Curriculum and Instruction. Now, board members, you'll note that this is an information item. Okay, so there is no action required on Monday evening. All right, 9.2, Deferred Retirement Option Program, DROP, presented by Mr. Marcus Chambers, Assistant Superintendent, Curriculum and Instruction. And here again, this will be an information item. No action required. 9.3, Revised Substitute and Temporary Employee Salary Schedule approved for fiscal year 2017-2018, effective January 1, 2019, presented by Mrs. Rita Scallon, Chief Financial Officer, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. All right. 9.4, Employee Assistance Program Services, contract between the School Board of Okaloosa County and Pattison Professional Counseling Center for counseling services rendered during the term of the contract, presented by Mr. Marcus Chambers, Assistant Superintendent, Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.5, Out-of-Field Report for the 2018-2019 school year, presented by Mrs. Karen Peak, Program Director of Professional Services, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.6, Cleared Certification Requirements and Issuance of Contracts for the 2018-2019 school year, presented by Mrs. Karen Peak, Program Director of Professional Services, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.7, Personnel Recommendations, presented by Mr. Marcus Chambers, Assistant Superintendent, Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.8, Employment Separations, presented by Mr. Marcus Chambers, Assistant Superintendent, Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Y'all are easy today. All right, 9.9, Employee Transfers, presented by Mr. Marcus Chambers, Assistant Superintendent, Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.10, Employee Reinstatement, presented by Mr. Marcus Chambers, Assistant Superintendent, Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval.
And Mr. Chairman, if we could
Yes, sir.
make one adjustment in that recommendation,
Sure.
that also will, should include a reinstatement with that back pay less any amounts that that person may have earned while in that
Very good, sir.
suspension period.
Right. And since these are now separated out when it comes time for this particular item, 9.10, should a board member make that potentially anticipated motion, hopefully you'll help guide us and
Yes,
make
sir.
sure that we include the correct language.
And the superintendent will just incorporate that in her recommendation.
All right,
for you.
all right, okay, all right, very good. All right, 9.11, deleted employee termination presented by Mr. Marcus Chambers, Assistant Superintendent Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 9.12, employee termination presented by Mr. Marcus Chambers, Assistant Superintendent Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 9.13, employee suspension presented by Mr. Marcus Chambers, Assistant Superintendent Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 9.14, employee suspension presented by Mr. Marcus Chambers, Assistant Superintendent Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 9.15, employee suspension presented by Mr. Marcus Chambers, Assistant Superintendent Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 9.16, reinstatement reimbursement of sick leave due to line of duty illness, injury, medical examination, presented by Mr. Marcus Chambers, Assistant Superintendent Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. And then 9.17, leave without pay, presented by Mr. Marcus Chambers, Assistant Superintendent Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. So that concludes that section. We move on to Section 10, discussion agenda. At this time, there are no items there. Section 11, construction program owners, representatives, business. And so this is where we'll now turn to our newly elected or appointed or whatever we did to you individual.
I think that's called a sentence.
Sentence. Mr. Destin.
I've met with the representatives of the program and had a very constructive meeting, I think. We talked about some potential problems that we have to address over the next few months. I've got a number of requests for payments here that I'm going to go over, and so we are moving forward.
Very good.
Can I make a comment? I would also like to thank Jacobs Titan for taking the time to meet with all of us. I know that was very informative for me, and so I just did want to say that we did get a chance. I think all of us got to meet with them, so I just wanted to say thank you to them.
Thank you, Mr. Bryant. Anything else on that particular item? All right, let's move on. Item 12, or Section 12, would be Information Technology Seat Management Contract, 12.1. CACI Task Order Number 2-123 for installation of strand fiber at Baker Fiber Main Feed Box at Baker School, presented by Mr. Dustin Keith, Specialist, Seat Management, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. All right, so moving on now, Mr. McInnes, it says Attorney's Business, and that's you, sir.
No report today.
All right, thank you. All right, Superintendent, you had some out-of-state field trips, and you may have some other things, too.
Just a couple of things. You know that our Baker Gators will be playing football at around 1 today for the state championship. You know, it's something when you taught the coaches that are leading these young men. Very proud of that program, very proud of the hard work, but also of Crestview. I noticed when I went through town today on the big marquee on 85 and 90, a huge good luck from the Crestview Bulldogs to the Baker Gators. I was very impressed with that, and I let that principal know how grateful and thankful I was for his sportsmanship. The other thing I just want to mention, I know there was an article in the newspaper concerning our audit. And I think it's very important for the public to understand this is an operational audit. What this is to tighten controls over things that we do. And I just want the board to know if ever there's anything that you think has not been brought before the board, Mrs. Scallon and I scoured our heads to see what that would be, because you approved the budget and then you approved the budget amendments. So we were trying to figure out in our minds if there was more that needed to be presented to the board, because I feel like we have nothing to hide, and I certainly don't get to spend any money, because it all goes for Nick's department and the buses department. But I want you to know we don't hide anything from anyone, and any time you have a question about money, just call us. And that brings me to another thing. With 2 new board members on board, and I say this every time we have new board members, if you need information from anyone, please feel free to call them. But if you need them to do something, please go through my office. That's just the way it is. And because I may have them working on something huge at the time. But they stand ready to answer any questions you have. You'll notice that they're very forthcoming in calling you. We call you. We try to keep you informed on what is going on. A lot is going on every single day. But if you have questions, call one of the assistant superintendents. They'll know specifically who you need to speak to. But I appreciate it, and I say go Gators.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. And board members, we've talked about this before, and as a matter of statute, and the attorney can correct me if I'm wrong, we don't have any employees except possibly 3. And that would be the lawyer, an architect, and maybe a CPA if we chose to have our own. All of the other employees fall under the direction and under the responsibility of the superintendent of schools. That's her job. And so she's being gracious by allowing us to talk to them. But if you need them to do something, that has to go through her.
One more just very brief thing. I want to congratulate Rita. That audit, if you go to other counties and you compare our audits to other counties, we do a remarkable job. And, you know, I've always said, and I've been told by people at the state level, we have the best CFO in the state of Florida, and I believe that. And those operational audits are designed to help us become better. We do see some things that we need to change. Maybe a little more controls over our child care programs, standardizing those child care programs. But Rita and I have gone through that thing with a fine-tooth comb, and I feel like, and I want to address this, if I may, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
One of the complaints, or one of the findings, was that 2 principals who were not technically principals received money. If you look at the statute is very clear, and we argued that point. That statute says if they are a principal or they are acting in the capacity of a principal, then they qualify. And we had some assistant principals who were running schools for us, strictly out of the kindness of their heart. So I just want you to know that one bothered me, I think, more than any of them, because we did follow statute. We did read the statute. And but you know what? Those guys down there in Tallahassee get the final call. So
well, it's like some of these judges' orders.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And we also didn't know that it was our responsibility to ensure that the charter schools were giving us correct information. But we know that now, and we will definitely move forward with that. I know you spent an inordinate amount of time working on that, Mr. Chambers, but we just want you to know that when you read something in there, we get to respond to that. They don't always agree with us. Right. But that one was one that especially bothered me, because I thought the statute was quite clear that those people were acting in the capacity of a principal. So we'll fix those things going forward, but I just wanted to make that comment.
And I get the part about them fulfilling all those different kinds of duties that principals have to do wherever they're assigned. But I'm trying to remember, I think those might have been some of our smaller schools?
Absolutely, very small schools with probably less than 220 kids,
Right.
or 230 kids, and we had them kind of acting under the supervision of
Sure.
curriculum and some
Right.
other areas, but
Right.
they were doing the
Right.
work. So I don't regret giving
No,
it to them.
I
I think it was the
understand.
right thing to do.
Right.
They deserved it.
And someone suggested, and I don't know, Mrs. Scallon, this might fall certainly within your ballpark, and I don't know about the legalities and all those kinds of things, but perhaps there might be another classification of principals, when in fact that individual might be designated a principal, but because the school size is smaller, then there might be some kind of commensurate adjustment to the salary schedule. And in that way, these individuals would still be eligible
Yes.
to apply, and no auditor could write us up.
I believe we've corrected that with those two individuals. They are now classified as principals.
Right.
We made
Smart
that
I am, I already did
correction
it.
because, but there may be other times when we have other programs that are
Absolutely.
very, very
Right.
small, maybe
Right.
within a school.
Right.
That we and that's a good suggestion. Maybe there's another classification. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Jackson.
And I was just going to comment that I know that we have already moved those two into principal positions, so moving forward, we won't have any
We won't
issues
have
with
that
that.
problem.
Right.
All right. Anything else?
Nothing from this side.
Okay.
On that issue.
Yes, sir.
I'm just going to request that Ms. Jackson direct the staff, and I guess that would be Ms. Scallion, to just give us a rundown on those points and what we're doing to address them so that we know what steps are being taken. You don't have to do it now, Rita. You can.
I just wanted to mention that typically what happens is when the Auditor General comes in every 3 years, we have a two-phase audit. We have an operational audit and we have a financial statement audit. So normally, when they're both completed is when we put them on the agenda under committee and staff, because of course you cannot change what the Auditor General writes. So that's typically when we bring that to you this year. For some reason, the information, and it is public record, got out there before the normal process that we use. So we'll be happy, because probably over half of them have already been corrected, but we'll be happy to just send you something telling you what's been done. And then when we bring the actual full report with both components, we'll have that in there also.
Exactly what I was
And-
looking for.
And I have one question, Mrs. Scallon, and it pertains to the same matter that Mr. Destin is speaking to. I'm trying to remember, when they conduct these audits, is there any protocol they follow in terms of how they've conducted audits in other districts, and if there's certain things they're looking for, because perhaps those may have been routine findings in other school districts?
Yes, and let me answer that in two parts.
Thank
First
you.
off, from their subject area, then they're going to follow GAP, and they're going to follow GAGIS, and they're going to follow General Accepted Auditing Standards. So
Right.
they have to comply with all of that.
Okay.
But what you're saying, and in fact, I had started doing that and I didn't finish. If you go out and you look at the Auditor General's reports by cycle, you will see that there are certain subjects that will be a common finding in multiple school districts. Just like if you go out there right now, there's 5 that are published, and there are probably about 5 or 6 of the findings that are common in each one of those districts. And there will be more coming online, because I did call over there to ask them about that. And so those are in the preliminary and tentative stage, so they're not able to release that information. But as those reports come out, you'll see that. Because from cycle to cycle, Tallahassee, in addition to following, your authoritative pronouncements that they have to follow, they will have areas that they want them to particularly look at, and they will want them to look at those areas in any district that they audit, just like the grandfathered salary schedule one. We're not the only
Right.
one that,
Of course
out
not.
of the 5 that has had that finding, and there are more in the pipeline that will show up. Same thing with IT findings, same thing with the SRO contractual, where verifying the services. Well, we do that for all contracts,
Right.
but the school resource officer, of course, if they're not there because you have a
Yeah.
gap. But that's a common finding in the 5 schools that they've already audited, probably 3 of them, they've cited that, and there's more coming. So yes, to answer your question, yes, there are common areas and subjects that they view
Look for.
in every district.
Right.
And there will be common
Right.
findings.
And so other districts had the same kinds of findings that we had, is that right?
Yes,
Right.
yes, yeah, there will
And-
be common findings, absolutely.
Right. And that's the one thing, and the superintendent spoke to it, but I'll speak a little briefly about it. That's the thing that I wish that could have been provided, and that would have been some perspective in terms of how we look compared to the other districts. And quite frankly, when you do it that way, we don't look so bad. We look pretty good.
Now, and as I always say, we as a district would always strive to not have
Oh, of
any
course.
audit findings. However, if you go back and you look at the Auditor General's website and all the reports over the years that's published out there, you will not find one school district that does not have audit findings. There is no such report coming from the Auditor General. So with that being said, in totality, I would welcome people to take our audit and compare it to
That's
other
right.
districts. And overall, it's a very good audit.
That's right.
And again, there's 2 components. The operational is basically, in layman's terms, it is an internal control audit to see if you have internal controls in place or either mitigating controls in place. And so, of course, with an organization as large as ours and as complex as ours, there's always going to be room for improvement. We welcome that, and we will implement those corrective actions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Cowan. All right, board members, so now we're at, unless you have anything else, Superintendent?
No, sir.
Okay, all right, so we're on section 15, board members' announcements and requests for information. And so normally what happens is I'll rotate a little bit, but let me start with Mr. Destin, if you have anything.
I don't have anything further. I think they've answered the questions about the audit, and I look forward to Rita's written communication to us, telling us the steps we've taken.
Yep. Very good. Mr. Bryant?
I would first like to concur with Ms. Jackson with Baker, the Gators, and Ms. Ivanchek, since that's one of your
Y'all
schools.
stepping on my territory.
But
Your thunder, right?
but I do want to say congratulations to Crestview High School
Yes.
for making it to the Final Four, and they played their hearts out. I was actually in Tampa. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it to the game, but it was exciting to watch it on Facebook and to see them really put the effort that they did. So congratulations to Crestview High School. And I also want to just say to Rita how much I appreciate all that you do. And if I do have any questions about anything that's budgetary, I know I can pick up the phone and you're going to call me. So with that being said, we do have the best CFO in all of the state, because when I was in Tampa last week for the school board and superintendent joint conference, her name was actually brought up by certain person I was talking to that complimented our CFO and how lucky and fortunate we are to have such a wonderful CFO. So Rita, I just wanted to say thank you, and I saw you smile up here, so we're good. So.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bryant. Dr. Kelly?
Well, I would echo congratulations to Rita as well. I've worked with her for many decades and know her to be a very valuable member of our staff. But I do have 3 things I want to
Sure.
say, and I'll be very brief.
Okay.
First of all, I just want to thank the chairman and the attorney and the other seasoned board members for being so welcoming and so helpful to us rookies in this role. Even though we're not rookies in the world of education, we're certainly newbies to this role, and I appreciate that support and that help. And to Jan and to Mary, thank you so much for reaching out and for being so helpful to us. And secondly, I did want to mention and to thank everyone for the opportunity to go to the new school board member training in Tampa. That was very important and informative, and I enjoyed it very much. So thank you for that. I'm happy to give any details of the sessions, plural, that I attended, if anybody is interested in those. And the third and final thing I just wanted to say briefly is, I believe at the last meeting, Mr. Bryant issued a challenge to me that we would be collegial district competitors, and I want to take him up on that and say that I too noticed and appreciated the signage in Crestview congratulating Baker, and I appreciate the all for one and one for all attitude, but we will enjoy some friendly competition along the way. And along that line, just to say that I heard that one of our two teams competing at the state level, or so along that journey, got to practice at UF's stadium, and the other got to practice at FSU's. And what a wonderful opportunity that is for young people to set foot on those campuses and have those opportunities where they might not otherwise have that, and to be able to set those goals for getting there and reaching that level one day.
That's right. Awesome. Okay. All right, Ms. Evanchak.
Well, one disadvantage of being last is I'm going to kind of repeat some things.
Don't worry, you'll get to be first eventually.
I know. I'm looking forward to that. But I want to also say, along with Dr. Kelly, how much I appreciate the staff and all the employees making my transition onto the board so smooth, and they've been so helpful, so many things that they've done to make this so pleasant, and that I'm very excited to be in this position and honored that I was elected to be here, and thank everybody for that. And again, I have to say, Baker is one of the schools in my zone, and I spoke with Mr. Martello before he left the other day. He was just bouncing with excitement, and he's kind of an easygoing guy, but he was really excited, and I know they're over there getting ready today to watch their team on the closed circuit on the TV and everything, and it was exciting to see them on the news playing at the FSU facility, because what an experience for those young people. So I'm hoping that Monday night at our board meeting, I will be saying we have state championship here in our Okaloosa County, and so forth. So that is an exciting thing. One other little thing I want to note to the public is that I notice on school websites that most of the schools are going to be having their music programs coming up next week. And oftentimes we talk about the marching bands and everything, but the programs are vast, and those instructors and students work very hard. So I'm hoping the public will get out and come to the holiday music programs that all the schools are going to be having in the next week or so as we head down towards our winter break. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evanchak. And I'll be brief because I've already said too much today. But welcome to both of you. And I know that you'll do a good job, and these folks are awesome as far as helping, so you've already experienced that, I know. All right, there is one other item on the agenda, and that's 16. That's public comment at the end of the meeting, if there is any. And then 17.1 will be adjournment. Mr. McInnes, is there anything we need to cover that we haven't done so today?
No, sir.
Board members, y'all good? How about any other questions or comments from anyone else? All right. We're done.
All right.
We're done. Thank you.
You bet.
All
Good
right.
job. Good job.
I got to make a street.